It's a piece of
You said it, Zoltan. The fourth season of The Witcher flopped hard. Why exactly? Let's just say the writing was already on the wall. Warning, major spoilers ahead. It's worth noting that not everyone hates it. The moment the review embargo dropped, a handful of critics came forward to offer reserved praise for Season 4, the old good but not great sticker of approval. For instance, IGN wrote, Liam Hemsworth takes on an unenviable task here, but the results are good enough. Yennefer has the best story this season, so you don't have to look to Geralt for that. Series parts of Season 4 are the weakest, but they're not enough to spoil what does work. Other critics, though, are less enthused. As Slash Film wrote, The Witcher sets up some major book moments in the end, but the impact of these familiar stakes feels dull, like a weapon that hasn't been sharpened in ages. The potential inherent in Sapkowski's world is immense, but the Netflix adaptation squanders it with Season 4, which is the weakest entry in the franchise so far. Fans, on the other hand, are a different story. You could say their torches are lit and their pitchforks are raised. And if fans aren't happy, it doesn't matter how many excuses critics make for a troubled production. As one fan wrote on X, oh, so Season 4 of The Witcher is bad. Cavill is missed to be sure, but the biggest problem is the writing itself. Aimless plotting and lackluster storytelling abound, apart from some fun side stories in Episode 5 and an epic battle in Episode 6. This season is a tedious slog. Another fan angrily called out the showrunner's refusal to stay true to the original source material, while also alluding to Cavill stepping down after Season 3. They wrote, No thanks, your writing and creative team want to have their own take on The Witcher. Make your own show then, instead of ruining an amazing story. You lost the one truly great thing about the show. Your showrunner needs firing ASAP. Those two fan comments touch on the main three reasons this latest season was doomed before Netflix even released it: Cavill's departure, bad writing, and frequent disregard for the original source material. It's pretty obvious that Cavill's departure was a killing blow for The Witcher. He cared deeply for the books and games, and it informed his performance in such a way that it earned him undying loyalty from the IP's main fanbase. Because of this, he was the show, so it doesn't even matter for most people that Liam did a decent job wielding Geralt's sword.
Don't judge me.
So, why did Cavill bail? He hasn't delved into it much himself, but all the pieces are there for us to put it together ourselves. One of the reasons is that Cavill probably has too many coals in the fire. As many of his fans know, he's a big Warhammer 40k nerd, and has been working for quite a while to bring a full-on Warhammer cinematic universe into existence, which is actually officially confirmed to be in the works now via Amazon. Considering how vast Warhammer 40k lore is, and how much potential there is for content, it would make sense that Cavill wants to divert most of his energy to this project. Beyond that, he's got a Highlander reboot in the works as well. And don't forget that he thought he was going to be donning the red cape once again, only to find out that he was being replaced by David Corenswet for James Gunn's reimagining of the DCU. Yeah, that was definitely a bummer for him. But future projects aren't the only alleged reason he stepped down. The more prominent reason is the fact that he was becoming increasingly critical of how the story was being adapted. After Season 1 came to an end, he started sending showrunner Lauren Hissrich notes on everything, from plot points to Geralt's dialogue. Hissrich told The Hollywood Reporter, everybody came out of Season 1 laughing and loving Geralt's fuming. But Henry was saying that when you read the books, you spend a lot of time in Geralt's head. So how can we put that on the page? While we don't know for sure how she felt about it, other writers who have worked on the show have come forward to point out they weren't the biggest fans of the books or the games. So it's not out of line to assume that Cavill's ideas weren't taken very seriously when he was still wearing the white wig. And for someone who loves the original source material, this obviously took its toll over time and completely sapped his enthusiasm for the project, so much so that he probably felt as cynical as Geralt by the time he was through. This leads us to the second reason Season 4 was doomed to fail. The showrunners have continuously failed to treat the original source material with the level of respect that fans desire. Really, this has been an issue since the show began, so it comes as no surprise that people were already over Netflix's unfaithful adaptation by the time Season 4 dropped. For instance, Yennefer's character varies quite a bit from the books, according to those who have read them. Hissrich apparently disregarded various short stories that provide valuable insight into her character and help us better understand her relationship with Geralt. After the first season was released, one Redditor wrote in part, from a manipulative, scornful, and stubborn sorceress to a mother and a partner who wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice everything, an incredible character arc. Their love story felt very unconventional, and it easily became my favorite in fantasy. Watching Yennefer and Geralt grow together is one of the best aspects of The Witcher in my opinion. This, however, is not the Yennefer we see in the show. Another controversial change occurred in Season 2, when they decided to kill off Eskel pretty much right after he's introduced. As one Redditor maligned, she didn't just kill Eskel, she turned him into a completely different character, made him an asshole, turned him into a literal monster, and then killed him. There is no doubt in my mind that it was a vindictive act of defiance directed at the fanbase. Another Redditor responded to this by touching on the changes to Ciri's character, specifically how she relates to the witches. They wrote, "Also annoyed at the relationship between Ciri and the other witches. In the books, the bonds they eventually develop is meant to feel something like what Arya Stark had with all of her older brothers in the Game of Thrones series. I was waiting for it to happen in the show, and it never does. They treat Ciri like an awkward outcast the whole time, and it's so sad. She's meant to be one of them." Overall, the general consensus is that Lauren Hissrich treats her adaptation as her own personal fanfiction instead of an honest-to-God attempt to make something that resonates with the fanbase. As one of the previous Redditors said, it almost seems intentional.
I want your desperation, crisp.
That being said, it can't be overstated that adapting a fantasy series is a Herculean task, no matter who's helming the project. Not only are showrunners tasked with actually building fictional worlds, as opposed to just describing them with words or rendering them in code, but they're responsible for capturing the overall essence of the IP. As far as the latter goes, many things play a part. Character design, acting, dialogue, story structure, the list goes on. And words can't describe how important it is for them to get it right. Fans of beloved fantasy or sci-fi series are notoriously hard to please, and it's pretty much impossible to make all of them happy and completely escape criticism. But it's by no means impossible to make something beautifully imperfect that not only resonates with pre-existing fans, but also welcomes in legions of new ones. It's been done many times before. Lord of the Rings, Dune, Game of Thrones, excluding the ending of course. All of these deviated from their source materials in their respective ways, but it was never enough to elicit the sort of hatred The Witcher has gotten over the course of 4 seasons. So basically, Hissrich and the gang don't have an excuse for how badly they've managed to doink their adaptation. And this leads us to the final reason the latest season of The Witcher didn't hit the mark: lackluster writing. The plot is actually pretty simple compared to previous seasons, almost too simple. Like it's a slog because of it. Throughout the 8 episodes, we follow the 3 main characters, Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri, as they each deal with their own respective journeys and don't interact with each other at all. Or should we say mostly. Geralt and Yennefer do meet up briefly in episode 7 for a hookup session that's straight out of a softcore porn video. Cheesy music and all. And there's the obligatory bath too, of course. Other than that though, everyone's off doing their own thing. Geralt's journey, while having a clear endpoint for most of the season, feels pretty aimless. It's just him and his traveling companions moving from one snag or monster fight to the next. Characters like Zoltan and Regis are fun new additions that add some color, but it's not enough to distract from the fact that it often feels more like a D&D campaign than a TV show. Ciri's journey with the rats sees her struggling with her identity and finding love, but much of it seems cheap since none of the other people in the ragtag group are fleshed out much. It also doesn't help that they all get ruthlessly slaughtered by Leo in the final episode. It's hard to care about two-dimensional characters getting sliced to pieces by a psychopath who also doesn't have much of a backstory to speak of. It doesn't matter how well Freya Allan emotes. Yennefer's journey is the most exciting part of the season since it revolves around her eventually facing off against Vilgefortz. The battle is definitely badass, and it holds considerable emotional weight. Istred's death is sad no matter how you feel about the show. Still, it only accounts for a single episode. The build-up beforehand, which spans across 5 episodes, is boring as hell, and everything that happens afterwards is just as shrug-worthy. The sad thing is that the straightforward nature of Season 4 is actually an improvement in some ways. The underlying problem that exists in every previous season of The Witcher is the fact that Hissrich and her team managed to make the show both childishly simple and needlessly complex at the same time. This is what happens when you attempt to weave an overly intricate plot around a bunch of two-dimensional characters like Vilgefortz or Emir, whose motivations just leave you shrugging in either confusion or disinterest. So after laying all of that out, one question remains. Will Hissrich and her team be able to bring their adaptation to a conclusion that feels at least somewhat satisfying for the few people who care enough to keep watching it? The upside for them is that they've set things up for a relatively easy finish. Things are all coming to a head, and a lot of the political scheming and other hard-to-follow stuff has fallen by the wayside. Geralt's a knight with conflicting priorities now. Ciri's a captive. Emir has a big monster in his dungeon.
Find Geralt of Rivia.
There's definitely a lot of action to look forward to, but as we've touched on throughout the video, most of this excitement will be reserved for people who are only familiar with the show. Longtime fans of the books and games checked out a while ago, and there's likely nothing Netflix can do to quell their disdain at this point. For them, they'll just have to hope that someone else comes along in a decade or so to give the adaptation another try.